Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Well, welcome back into Weathered Questions. We're making it our way through October, and we are so glad that you are here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your reviews and your feedback. And a reminder, here on Weathered Questions, we are answering your questions. What is on your radar? So be sure to submit your questions. Email them in to weatheredquestions@gmail.com to join the conversation. You can write in through, text on that email, or send in a video or audio file, video file, and we're happy to play your question as well on the air. I'm joined here today by Kaj O'Mara, my co-host. How are you doing today, Kaj?
I'm doing great. We're just a couple of weeks away here from Halloween week, and it's still a big deal in our house. I still don't know what I'm going to be yet. My youngest daughter's been kind of waffling too, which is unlike her. So this could kind of be one of those last second deals for us. We'll just kind of see what happens. I think it's mainly more about the candy for her anyway. Walking around and getting candy. I know it. But they've had quite the haul the last few years, and their candy bins are running low. So I can guarantee in a couple weeks, that's what we're going to do.
What is the like holy grail candy for your household? Like, what's the one everyone's after?
Well, it depends which kid you ask.
Okay.
One of them's all over the chocolate. The other likes these sweet tarts that gives my tongue an ulcer. Like, I can't eat them. So, I mean, it's probably a good thing that I can't eat them, but at the same time, those just disgust me entirely.
And what are you stealing out of their candy baskets or buckets after they've gone to bed?
Well,
that's the ultimate question.
Dad tax has been lowered. I've been doing sweeping tax cuts this season.
Oh, wow. Look at you. How
I'm
generous.
not quite down to zero, but y'all might remember maybe a dozen episodes ago, I have to get down my weight a little bit so I can go parasailing with my oldest daughter next summer, because that's one weight limit I can't bend, because it kind of has to do with physics, and you have to be able to fly in the chute. So I am trying to do that. So I have done a sweeping tax reform. It's tax free. Dad tax is tax free this Halloween season. So
tax free and sugar free.
Yes, I'm trying my best. So we'll see if I can keep that, White House promise, or if I have to do a quick little, filibuster on the Senate floor, or a temporary bill to keep the government open. One of the two, just to see what happens. But
well, good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, and for those that get aches and pains, and that might be kind of sensitive to, pressure in the atmosphere, we hear about barometric pressure a lot on weather reports, and especially in television weather reports. You don't see it in apps at all. Hardly at all, but it's there if you really want to hunt down for it. But in a lot of traditional television broadcasts, you hear a lot about barometric pressure. Maybe it's a number, or maybe it's a symbol on a weather map, like an H or an L. So the question posed today, question number 1 in this podcast, why does that matter? Jan, what do you think?
Yeah, I was actually just talking with one of my coworkers about this a couple weeks ago, and it is something, as meteorologists, we use pressure all the time. That is probably the starting point of pretty much any forecast for us. And it's probably one of the last things that the general public, the general population is thinking about. Everyone seems to want to know, what's the temperature, what's the cloud cover, precipitation, and maybe a little bit of wind. The fun thing is, though, the reason that we care about it so much as meteorologists is that the pressure goes into each and every one of those things. And so it really is, it's the starting point. It's the foundation, and that temperature, that cloud cover, that precipitation, those wind directions and speeds, those are the building blocks that go on top of all of that. So pressure really truly does go into everything. It's the changes in pressure, or the lack of changes sometimes, as you've probably heard us talk about over the last couple of episodes, that create weather or create the lack of change in weather. So wind is the easiest one to think about. The actual difference in pressure, wind is the result of pressure trying to equal itself out. It's essentially, high pressure, low pressure. You've got different areas of pressure, and wind is the air moving between those and trying to kind of even things out. So that's the easiest example. However, again, temperature, which is probably the first thing when anyone asks, what's the weather like today? You're probably looking for what's the high temperature today. And that is influenced by the wind moving things around, by the air pressure and everything. And then the cloud cover is the other easy thing to think about there, where essentially when you have pressure, air pressure is the weight of the atmosphere. It's the weight of the column of air above you. So if you think about it, hard to think about, but air does have weight to it. And so air pressure is how much of that air is pushing down on top of you. I'm using my hands like I'm making a sandwich here. And it's how much of that air is pushing down on top of you. And when you have higher pressure, you have more air pushing downward, and that's going to lead to your more sunshine, clearer skies, because that air is moving downward. Lower pressure, you have less air pushing down on you. You're going to lead to the cloudier weather, the stormier weather. And so air pressure plays into each and everything that we're looking at. So if we have low pressure moving through, we can infer what the cloud cover is going to be like, what the precipitation is going to be like, what the wind is going to be like. All of those things come back to air pressure at the forefront.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And the two other items I would just add to that would be, what's our moisture content like? Whether or not a low pressure system can actually do anything to our weather, or if it just passes by with some scattered clouds. That's one. But then one of the biggest questions we might get asked about this is, all right, a low pressure coming through. Great. What do you mean? Like, how does the air go up? Like, how does that happen? Like, is there a hole in the atmosphere? Does the air flow up? Well, if you look all around you right now, unless you're in an elevator at the top of a building, you have ground all around you right now. And if an air mass converges or flows together to try and fill in that void of lower pressure, because as you just accurately mentioned, air flows from high pressure to low pressure. Well, okay, where it's going to converge, and if it collides, where is it going to go? It's not going to go underground, right? It has to go upward. And that's where we start to get into fronts, and the whole topic can kind of get out of control at that point. But there's different units to measure barometric pressure if you want to get nerdy about it. I'm sure we both gotten emails that says, quit using millibars. I don't know what a millibar is. Well, we do, dude. So chill out. Not a big deal. Just know if it's rising or falling. It's fine. But a lot of people use inches. And for those folks, by the way, that are curious about how they might be able to calibrate their home barometer, if they happen to have one, see if you can find the nearest National Weather Service site to you, just an area airport, and just see how close they are in their elevation to yours. Really good chance, especially if you're listening to us in the Midwest, that the nearest airport is fairly close to yours, and you can get your home sensor lined up pretty nicely with something like that. So it doesn't get talked about a lot, Jan, but it's super critical to what we do.
We literally use it every single day. It is very important in everything from, again, those pressure systems, a cold front and a warm front, to something seemingly as simple as the temperature, or if it's going to be sunny or cloudy. It all comes back to air pressure. It all plays into it.
Yep, you got it. Absolutely.
All right, so let's move on as we are nearing, the mid to end of October here, starting to think a little bit more about colder weather and snow and such. And so I was actually asked this one recently as well by a friend. How can it ever be, for instance, 28 degrees but still raining? Or how can it be 36 degrees and still snowing? So why can we get these temperatures on either side of freezing, but the precipitation is doing the opposite of what you might expect? Or if it is maybe, say, below freezing, why isn't rain sticking or freezing onto trees or things like that? So how does that work, Guy?
Yeah, it's a loaded question that has some physics involved, and we're going to skip all the physical stuff, and we're going to the stuff that makes total sense in this case. 28 degrees and raining. That should short circuit in your mind that we should be having snowfall occurring at this point. It's cold enough for snow. Why isn't it snowing? Well, that means something's going on in the atmosphere that's not conducive for snow. And so as a result, there has to be part of that atmospheric layer that is above freezing. And typically, it's just a couple thousand feet up, sometimes just 1,000 feet up off the ground, it might be 38, 39, 40 degrees. And what you typically see in a situation like that is a stiff east or northeast wind that's got cold, dense air down near the ground. And then you've got a different layer of air that's flowing maybe between 1,500 feet and 5,000 feet that carries almost all the moisture there, by the way, at least in this case. And it gets advected over the top, meaning it's transported horizontally, and warm air is less dense than cold air. And so as a result, we wind up seeing all the moisture, the warmth sitting up top, all the cold air down near the ground, and then whatever raindrops happen to fall through that layer and down near the ground winds up being exactly what we have as a freezing rain situation here. So that's how it can be 28 and raining. Now, what about 36 and snowing? So it's kind of the opposite in that case. You have a vertical profile of the atmosphere, and it is below freezing all the way down except maybe that final 500 feet. And so your snowflakes have already developed, but that last 500 feet is just not quite enough to melt them. So as a result, you're kind of getting a wetter snow at that point. So that's how that works. And we see that a lot, by the way, in the fall and the spring, where kind of a transition season where we're not quite down to freezing at the ground, but I can promise you up top, even just 500 feet could be a little bit of a different environment than what you've got down near the ground, just to keep that stuff in snow form so it's not going to transition to a cold rain or anything. Yep. And then why won't it freeze on trees? That's where we get into some chemistry, some physics, some nastiness. It depends on the temperature. It depends on the wind. Fog loves to freeze on trees just because it gives an opportunity to stick there. Snow can kind of do a wide variety, I would say. A wet snowflake can stick on there. Maybe a dry one falls off. And so I think that's kind of the way I attack that particular part of the question. Have anything to add to that, Jan, on that one?
It could be a little bit, again, this was just a generic question, right? But what could be happening if you're seeing something like this happen is that maybe it was very warm the week ahead or, the day ahead or something. And I believe we recently talked about this actually, that everything is giving off heat, every living thing at least. And so a tree is actually radiating a little bit of that, energy and heat out. And so it could just be a case of that tree is still warm enough, even if the air temperature around it has cooled down, that it's still kind of radiating enough of that heat out that it's still technically above that freezing temperature. That could also be a factor that's playing into it.
Yeah, I think that all works. And it also depends on what type of tree it is. Is it,
Yes.
one that's got needles? Is it the one that did have leaves and now doesn't because they fell off because of the seasonal change? Maybe there are some leaves left on it for whatever reason. All that can all play a role in that kind of stuff. But we have now hit that time of the program, Jan. We're doing something a little bit different here. We're going to bring in our old buddy, Jeff Stein, to bring in the trivia question. Hit it, Jeff.
Today's trivia question.
All right, today's question it's a write-in one, so we're not giving you any answer choices. Name the 3 temperature scales that meteorologists use. So there are 3. Name the 3 temperature scales that meteorologists use. We'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Again, write-in question. So here you go. Alrighty, hopefully you've had some time to chat with your elbow neighbor a little bit, think through things. A reminder again, that trivia question is name the 3 temperature scales that meteorologists use. So, a lot of folks probably listening here are familiar with the US as we talk quite a bit about that. First temperature scale, Fahrenheit. That is probably the one that folks around here are most familiar with. Next one is going to be what pretty much all the rest of the world uses. And as meteorologists, we use it a lot because of scientific measurements and trying to keep things equal across the world. Celsius. So we've got Fahrenheit, we've got Celsius. We're not counting spelling errors here. So as long as you got the general gist of it, I don't even know if I could spell Fahrenheit in the spelling bee if somebody asked me to be completely honest. All right. And then the third one is Kelvin. That one, Kel. Sounds like Kevin, but it's Kelvin.
Yeah. That's a fun one, by the way. That's a fun one. And people might ask, well, why would you use that? So what's interesting about Kelvin is the Kelvin scale. We think about Celsius and Fahrenheit. The lower the number is, the colder things are. Well, it's true on a Kelvin scale too, but the problem is if you ever get Kelvin down to 0, that's absolute.
It's a problem.
0. It's a big problem. In fact, the freezing point of water is 273 Kelvin. So it's that equates to 0 degrees Celsius, which equates to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a much larger scale, but also shows how cold things, can get, especially kind of in the microscale world here. But we will use that for like entropy calculations and other big, huge variables in the atmosphere that everyday folks don't even want to really touch. But at the same time, we have to use it. Now, I will tell you that it is an absolute scale, but 1 degree Kelvin, when it jumps from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, it is the same distance that the Celsius scale is. Whereas the Fahrenheit scale, 1 degree of difference in Fahrenheit is not the same as it is in Celsius. So there are some math formulas out there.
It's a weird fraction.
Right, exactly. And
that I probably should have at the top of my head, but I don't.
Yeah, well, it's so in order to wind up getting to Fahrenheit, it's 1.8 C plus 32. That's how you get to Fahrenheit when you get those things converted. So it's kind of an interesting scale, and I bet everybody got let me try again. Celsius and Fahrenheit right. Some of you may have gotten Kelvin, but the area chemistry teachers, I'm sure, are applauding loudly that we're talking about Kelvin today. Oh, by the way, the way that they're abbreviated is nothing out of this world. It's the letter F.
Yep.
It's the letter K for Kelvin, letter C for Celsius. And if you ever want to compare the two, grab a thermometer. F is usually on one side, C is on the other. They don't list Kelvin on those garden thermometers because there's no reason, but you're absolutely right about the rest of the world tends to use Celsius. But I do want to toss this little tidbit in here about the pressure talk that we had earlier and then temperature that we have now. And I want to equate it to something that I think brings us all together as a society, and that would be food and meals. So we're going to pivot slightly. And I would challenge you next time you're at the grocery store, walk down the pasta aisle and just see and go find one of the big box manufacturers where they've branded their stuff as the cheesiest for the last 2,050 years and see if you can go grab one of these boxes and just turn it over. And you're going to see something on there called high altitude instructions. So to circle back to your point, Jan, why does barometric pressure matter? Well, it's the weight of the air above you. So if you're in Iowa, we're actually kind of close to fairly standard pressure, not like they are in Miami. We're right next to the ocean, but we're pretty low down there in relative speak. Let's go to Denver, where we are a mile high in the atmosphere. City. Yeah. Did you know that water boils there about 10 degrees cooler than it would in Miami? And that's because there's literally less pressure to hold the molecules back. And so the 8-minute boil time of your macaroni in South Florida might actually be 9 minutes in Denver. And let me tell you, it can mess you up. If you are doing stuff at high altitude and you take your old recipe that you've used, it's very different. And even going on that, I got a bag of coffee once that I bought at a grocery store. It was Grand Junction, Colorado. It had the word thunder in it. That's why I bought it. And we drove down the side of the Rockies and got down in the plains in Nebraska. We stopped off at a Love's gas station. I remember this, but my buddy and I, Kyle, and the thing was vacuum shut. And I'm going, that makes sense because we went down into higher pressure and now the surrounding air crunches it in there.
Yep.
So it was really cool. So just think about that. Altitude and cooking temperatures. It's kind of fun to think about.
And it's canning season right now. We're nearing the end of canning season, but it is canning season. That's another thing that folks that are home canners know very, very well. That your recipes for canning will literally have high altitude instructions, or even instructions based on, we talked about how Iowa versus Miami, right? Like there's not as much of a difference there, but that there are very specific changes that need to happen in order for food safety if you're doing canning at various altitudes. And so yeah, it plays into a lot of things. Again, just like you said, coming back to pressure, it's in everything. It matters.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I remember seeing once on the Travel Channel where there was a bakery at a higher altitude and they could not get their milk shipped in plastic bottles because it'd blow the cap off. They had to use cans. Otherwise, the outside lack of pressure would just take the cap right off the milk of the plastic jug. So you don't think about it until you travel. And
sounds messy.
If you make your way over to Denver, seriously, even just a bag of fun-sized chips, just grab one at the airport, put it in your bag, and see what it does when you get home. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here we're wrapping up the show here today, but one little last bit that we want to throw in, talking a little bit about as we're losing daylight here and things are changing around as we're heading closer and closer to winter, that the sun angle is changing, and a lot of folks driving into work, I know this is me pretty much every day, are driving straight into the sun. Or maybe on your way home, you're driving straight into the sun. It seems to be, no matter what you do, both sides of the commute, you're kind of inflicted by that blinding sunshine. And it causes a lot of trouble this time of year, Kai. We get a lot of accident reports and stuff as people are maybe coming around corners and all of a sudden kind of blinded by the light to, use some wonderful song lyrics.
Oh, yeah. I think when it comes right down to it, I never really understood much of this until, because even my old work shift, I'd get in the middle of the night and I would come home around midday. And at no point, whether you're going east or west, was the light ever in my eyes. It wasn't until 2020 when we were kind of doing a hybrid work model where we would come into work and then I would quickly get out of the office. And between 7 and 7:30 that fall, I would hit, for those folks that are familiar with Blair's Ferry Road, I would hit Blair's Ferry Road looking east and I could not see a thing. I could not see a thing. And you think about any easterly moving road, any westerly moving road at the opposite end of the day has the same problems. But then, I got to thinking, why in the world, we'd get these on-ramp and off-ramp accidents on the interstate. And I'd go, oh, the weather's fine. Like, what could be causing this? And it didn't ever occur to me that looking over your shoulder directly into the sun, that's hard. It's really, really hard. And, sometimes you have those accidents where the sun does play a role in that kind of stuff. And that's why, especially during that time of day, I just think it's really crucial, especially when the sun is up like that. That makes you even more cautious to watch for kids on their way to school because you can't see much. It's sun blindness and it's tough to see. And I've actually done some work in the past about figuring out what the sun angles are at different times of day and where the main beam is going to be shining. So it gets pretty tricky. And this is the time of year, September and October, two of our worst months right now for commuting in the sun, just because of the angle and the time of day that it is. And naturally it's lower in the sky too.
Exactly. And maybe we're, depending on what time you're commuting and such, maybe we're starting to get towards the end of that for you and you're like, great, we're almost done. But remember, as we approach daylight saving time here in early November, we're going to, scoot those clocks, fall back, and then you may have it all over again, at a quote unquote new time. So,
yeah, good point. Yeah, because then when you fall back, all of a sudden you think to yourself, man, I'm getting to the office as soon as the sun is coming up. Wait, now I got to do this for like 30 more days.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something you don't really think about much. Now, I will say I don't have to commute hardly at all anymore because I work from the house. But at the same time, I'm a dad that's got to carry the kids around to practices and events and all this stuff. And I happen to get the basketball schedule. Okay. 5:00 practice. Really, Jan? It's going to be in my face. I'm talking about the evening, by the way. Yes, it's going to be in my face. Coming home, I'm going to be looking right to the west. There is
Yep.
no visor that's going to stop me. And I'm going to just be like, I'm just not going to be able to see anymore.
I tell you, it's been a new thing for me because, like, to your point, right? Meteorologist schedules, we're not normally commuting when most other people are commuting.
Right.
But now that I have a normal time job, I'm on 235 in Des Moines with everybody else coming around those curves. And I tell you, that's the state capitol and all its gold on top. It really catches the sun in a whole other way. And it's a whole other problem.
It does. Well, and it made me realize that quite possibly the best commuting weather is overcast and dry.
Oh, yeah.
Really. I mean, that's just what it is. You know, these quote unquote nice commute mornings when the sun is out, it's actually not. It's actually a real pain. So,
I agree.
You know, bring on the cold fronts. And as we get later in the fall, we'll be able to get you some really cool statistics about cloud cover and how, in theory, it should be going up as we go later into the fall. But in the meantime, we have now taken another 26 minutes of your day, and we thank you for staying with us. Be sure and encourage your friends and family also to take a quick listen, leave us a review, and also don't forget to submit your questions. We want to know what's on your radar. You can email us your questions to weatheredquestions@gmail.com to join the conversation. Until next time, stay safe.